Okay, so last video we talked about the counters to Despia, which is the other tier 1 deck. Today we're gonna have a look at some counters to Shaddoll, and I know it has been like a few days since the last video. Couldn't really keep up with the daily upload schedule that I hoped I could since the beginning of the month, but well, what I did do is I beat the base ending of Silksong, so that's something, right? Anyway, so the cards here, not every card is in the same level as the others, so like some are better, some are worse, some have more applications against other decks, and some are more specific, and some I don't really recommend, but I will still talk anyway, just to give my own thoughts about the cards in this list. So I'm gonna go over every one of them and just let you know what I think personally and what I recommend and don't recommend. So first of all is DD Crow. This is like the one hand trap that works against the deck. Not a lot of hand traps works against the deck because of how the deck functions, right? Okay, so what Shaddoll cards do, let me just pull up Dark Spellcasters because most of them are Dark Spellcasters. So let me just get an example of Shaddoll. Okay, so Shaddoll's as a deck is a fusion deck, and a lot of their effects, like most of their effects, activate in the graveyard. So they are kind of like a graveyard-centric flip deck. And even though as a flip deck you might think it's not very good just because flip effects also so hard to activate, but because of how their skill works, they just get a face down monster for free when they go second. So the flip effects are actually really relevant. And because of that, and also the fact that all of this stuff activates from the graveyard, hand traps like Effective Veiler just aren't very good. So like the only thing that pretty much works against the deck is DD Crow as a hand trap, because it banishes from the graveyard and a lot of this stuff activates from the graveyard. So I'm just adding this card here just to like show the related cards while I explain. It's just like a shortcut. So what you do with DD Crow is that it's not to hit the rest Shaddoll incarnation that they send with the skill, because the skill sends this to the graveyard. That's not the main target you want to hit. The main target you want to hit is the Schism that they sometimes send to do as like part of their turn 1 combo. So the way that they search this is one of two ways. They either, technically one of three ways, but usually one of two ways. They either search it directly with their skill, just by revealing 2 cards, and you can't really stop that from happening, so that's, if they have it, they have it. But more likely, the way that they search it is with, they send it to the graveyard with one of their Shaddoll effects, like Construct, and then they add it back with the graveyard effect of Construct. So then you can just chain DD Crow to just banish a Schism so that they don't get it forever. And they also can technically add it with App Cologne by adding it to the hand and discarding another card, but there are other stuff they don't want to search as well, so that like they don't always add Schism off of that search effect. And even if they do, you can still hit other stuff, like you can still hit the rest Shaddoll incarnation to deny them the quick effect flip, and also you can also banish just other stuff to prevent them from having like a recursion, because they can add back the spell traps pretty much every single turn indefinitely, because all of their fusions float and add back spell traps. So just DD Crow is just really good at hitting a lot of things in general. And yeah, that's like the only hand trap that works. So like the other thing that you might be considering is Skullmeister, right? Because it also hits the graveyard, but Skullmeister is not very good against Shaddoll because they can chain block. They activate like 3 graveyard effects at the same time, and maybe like usually it's like 2 graveyard effects plus something like a construct to chain block everything. So in that situation, you can't even use the Skullmeister because the most recently activated effect will not be a graveyard effect, or they can even use App Cologne to negate itself. I think it can negate itself. Yeah, it can negate itself, so you can use it to chain block. Even in turn 1 if your opponent doesn't have anything. But if they have something, then the negate is going to be even better. So despite being a graveyard deck, Skullmeister is not very good. So let's have a look at the spells. So Droplet is okay. It's not like so good that you must play it. It's better against. It's a lot better against Despia, which is the reason why you should still play it. Just because it covers more matchups. But if you're only playing against Shaddolls, then this card is like only okay. And the strength of this card is not only because it hits other decks, it's also because it's just good going first or second. If you go first, you can just set it, and then you just negate something that your opponent has. It's not that high value if you go first, because just negating stuff on field against your dolls is just not very effective in general. But going second, you can negate a Winder, and that's pretty good. And theoretically, you can still also use Book of Moon on the Winder or Book of Eclipse, because they don't really have protection on their Winder, aside from its own card destruction protection, so you can just flip it face down to prevent the Winder from blocking you from special summoning. But I didn't include those two in the list of cards I'm going to talk about, because Book of Moon and Book of Eclipse aren't very effective against Winder because of the Red Shaddoll incarnation that they have in the graveyard. So if they play well, they will have this in the graveyard to be able to use during your turn, and then they're going to try to make the Winder when you try to do your combo. And then they were going to have the Winder to lock you from special summoning. And then if you try to Book of Moon to flip it face down, I mean, that works, but they can just flip it back up with the Red Shaddoll incarnation that we get from the skill. They can just banish this from the graveyard, flip it back face up, and then now you have to still contend with Floodgate. So it forces them to waste the incarnation, and also you can special summon like one more time because it got flipped face down, but it's not very effective, and I don't think it's really like that high value compared to like the other stuff that you could be playing. And Book of Eclipse is even worse, because they don't make Winder during their turn. They make it during your turn after you have already committed to some amount of plays. They wait for you to like summon some monsters, and then they try to chain the Schism to make the Winder while you have like an effect that special summons. And then like when the chain resolves and you special summon your monster, you will be immediately locked out of special summoning. So that's like the goal of what that deck is trying to do, is to try to chain the Schism in order to just waste your special summons. And in that situation, Book of Eclipse is even worse, because you not only book the Winder, you also book your own monsters, and also they can just flip back the Winder, so you just hurt yourself more than you hurt your opponent. And then during your end phase, all of the stuff gets flipped face up, and then they draw cards, and then because they are flip monsters, they trigger their effects, so it's terrible. Book of Eclipse is just not very good against Shaddoll at all. But it's good against other decks, so maybe you should still play it. And then we have a bunch of floodgates, and we might as well talk about the trap floodgates as well while we're at it. So Fissure, Necro Valley, Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, Royal Command, Die of Truth, and Non-Fusion Area. All of these are floodgates. So the objective is basically you have these going first, you just have it set or activated, and then your opponent just couldn't play their deck. So these on paper are very strong because they just completely stop the deck, but Shaddolls is quite an annoying deck to try to stop because of their skill. The skill just gets them face down Shaddoll when they go second, and then what they can do is just they can set Dragon, and then they can just flip it up and then just bounce any card from your field back to your hand. So they just have an in-archetype way, a guaranteed in-archetype way to just get rid of any floodgate that you might have, and it's like incredibly difficult to stop. The only two floodgates that stop it is the Eye of Truth, because it stops them from using the skill to reveal because their hand is already revealed, or Royal Command, which just negates all flip monster effects. But if you have like Necro Valley or Non-Fusion Area, they can just very easily get rid of it. So even then, even if you have something like a Royal Command, it just negates everything, they can just draw a Backrow removal, because Shaddoll players are aware of floodgates like these that just stop their turn. So a lot of people are playing Backrow removal like MST to just pop these floodgates. And if your floodgate gets popped, then you just lose pretty much. And also the biggest problem of floodgates is that they're just not good going second. If you play them in your deck and then you go second, and then you look at these cards in your hand, and then your opponent still gets to combo, and then you just what do? You cry, right? And also you don't play against Shaddoll every game, so like very niche floodgates like Royal Command is just not. You shouldn't play them because it just doesn't do anything against literally any other deck in the meta. It's good against Tendangles, I guess, but that deck's not in the meta, so I guess like the Eye of Truth and non-fusion area has more applications as a floodgate just because it also hits stuff like Despia. But there's still floodgates, and I don't recommend really playing trap floodgates in general, just because they're just so bad when you go second. If you're gonna play a floodgate, you might as well play one that's also if you play floodgate in general, just as a rule of thumb in Yu-Gi-Oh in general, you either have a floodgate that's good both going first or second, or you have a floodgate that's so good going first that you just win the game the moment you flip it face up. And also it has like a good matchup spread so that it doesn't become completely useless if you play against a different deck, right? And that's like the thing about best of one, is that these very specific floodgates that wins you the game against a very specific deck is just not good at all, just because you can't side them in like in best of three. The better one is Necro Valley, because it's also pretty good going second. If your deck doesn't care about Necro Valley, you should play it. It also hits like Despia, so it's good in that way. And the good thing about this card, both against Despia and Shaddoll, is that if you go second, you can activate this card as the first thing you do, and it immediately forces out their fusion summon, because Schism fusion summons by banishing from the graveyard. And same with Branded in red, it doesn't banish from the graveyard, but it adds from the graveyard and then fusion summon. So the moment you activate Necro Valley, your opponent is immediately forced to use all of those fusion spells or traps to make their fusion monsters. So you can force them out early so that you can then play your linear combo without needing to worry about those quick play fusion spells. And Dimensional Fissure is also just probably better than more niche stuff like Royal Command, because it just is good against a lot of other monster-based decks that activate a lot of stuff in the graveyard. It's not that good against Despia, just because Despia monsters still activate when they are banished. So like all of the effects when they are used as fusion material both activate when they are in the graveyard or banished. So Dimensional Fissure is just not that ideal against that deck. So other floodgates you can play is the best one I like the most is Silent Graveyard. So this card is a quick play spell, but it says discard one card effects that activate in the graveyard this turn are negated. So it's a lingering floodgate, so if your opponent just draws an MST, they can't really immediately out it. It's good against a lot of other decks that activate from the graveyard, and also it's just a quick play. Quick play spells are just better than trap cards in general because you can use them whenever you want. And it's also good against some decks when you go second. It's also pretty good against Shaddoll when you go second. It doesn't really stop the Winder, but it stops the El Shaddoll fusion making construct and then send a bunch of cards to the graveyard and trigger like 10 billion graveyard effects during your turn. It does stop that, so it's still somewhat useful when you go second, which cannot be said by like the other continuous traps. I guess I should talk about like these continuous traps a bit more, even though I don't recommend them. So Royal Command says flip monsters effects cannot be activated, also their effects are negated. So this might seem that you just negate the flip effects, and that's not true. You negate every single effect of a flip monster. So you not only negate the flip effects, you also negate the graveyard effects of all the Shaddolls, because they are flip monsters, and the continuous trap just negates every effect that is listed on a flip monster. So you also stop the graveyard effects. So this is a lot better than you might think it is, but I still don't recommend playing it just because it only works against Shaddoll and absolutely nothing else, and also you have to go first. Also, another lingering floodgate is a different dimension ground, and even though it's a trap, it is lingering, and also it is pretty good against other decks as well. It's more versatile than like something like Royal Command, and also if you activate this card, it's very, very difficult for Shaddoll to get rid of, just because they can't just like set a dragon and then bounce it, because you know you can just use it preemptively and then they can't really do anything about it. Again, it's not really good against Despia, same with Dimensional Fissure, but I think it's just a really good card in general against a lot of other rogue decks as well. Eye of Truth, it works the way pretty much by revealing your opponent's hand at all times to prevent them from using the skill. So this ruling works against everything that reveals cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! In general. Basically, the ruling says that if your hand is already revealed, you cannot reveal cards that are already revealed as like part of the cost. So the cost of revealing must be an action where you go from not revealed to revealed, if that makes sense. So if their hand is already revealed, they cannot reveal their hand to use their skill. And a lot of skill reveal stuff, so like Despia reveals, Shaddoll reveals, tons of other stuff, tons of other decks reveal as well, like Chimera also reveals. And by using this card, you just stop them from revealing anything. And, well, the problem with that is that, first of all, it's a trap, so you're gonna use it during your first turn, if you go first. And second of all, you don't really stop anything from like the Shaddoll combo. All you do is you make them more bricky, because the deck is quite bricky if you can't search with the skill. So you're just hoping that they don't already have combo in their hand, and if they do, you just lose anyway. So don't really recommend that. Non-fusion area is probably the best of the trap floodgates, because it hits both Despia and Shaddoll, and if they can't out it, they can't play the game at all. But again, you have to go first for this card to work, and I just don't recommend these cards in general. And Shadow Imprisoning Mirror is also a card that works against both Despia and Shaddoll, and also other dark decks as well, but your deck has to not be playing dark monsters, otherwise this just negates your stuff as well. Okay, so we went on quite a bit of a detour. Let's have a look at the other stuff that I didn't mention yet. MST is pretty good because it hits the Schism. So part of the turn 1 board is that they always have Schism, so you just chain the MST to pop it so that they can't make Winder that easily, at least. They can still make it using El Shaddoll Fusion, the Quick Play Fusion, but the easiest way that they can make is completely stopped by just having MST. Cosmic Cyclone is better because it banishes the Schism so that they can't recycle it again, but it has a life point cost, so that might not be ideal. But MST just works fine in most cases anyway, so I wouldn't really stress too much even if you are playing MST and not Cosmic. But Cosmic is cheaper because you can get it from box chip, so I mean, if you have Cosmic, you can also play Cosmic. And even if it can still make Winder, they are forced to make it using the stuff on their field and hand, using the El Shaddoll Fusion, and that also means that they can't make the construct during your turn. And then, because making construct during your turn is really, really strong, not only because it sends stuff from their deck, and then they can like negate your stuff with Genius, or pop stuff with Dragon, and they, not only that, it also gives them a lot of follow-up just by having a guy on the field that has a floating effect that adds stuff from the graveyard when it is sent to the graveyard. So just, even if they can still make Winder, just by denying them the construct play is really, really strong. And also, Schism can technically send a monster from your side of the field to the graveyard, and MST stops that as well. And finally, we have Curse Seal of the Forbidden Spell. This just negates any spell. It's primarily just played in Dragonic Contact because it's just, you just get free spells. And it's not as good as it is against Despia, but it is still pretty okay. And so you should still play it if you're playing Dragonic Contact, just because it just hits so many things. It just hits any spell. And a lot of deck play spells. You know what the most devastating hit against is against Chimera, because you just negate the fusion and then they just cannot use the Chimera fusion ever again in the game. And so even if it's only okay against Shaddoll because they have like free fusion spells, you should still play it if you could, if your deck like synergizes with it, just because it hits other decks so much better, like Despia and Chimera. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the cards I'm going to talk about. Not too many that I feel like I should mention, because to be fair, Shaddoll is a really hard deck to try to like play around, because that deck is just so good and has so many outs to stuff that you might have. Like even the floodgates that I talked about are so easy to out from them, just by them having like a going second effect on their skill that just gives them a Shaddoll Dragon to bounce any sort of floodgate that you might be giving them. So it's quite hard to like have very silver bullety counters to that deck, unlike Despia. So the best you can hope for is either you just have some of these that like DD Crow to like stop them from setting up if you go second, or you just go first and then you play your combo and then you just hope that you can stop everything that the Shaddoll deck can do. But well, there is a reason why, you know, Shaddolls are tier 1, so yeah, not too much I can talk about in that regard. That deck is just pretty hard to beat. So yeah, wish you luck in the KC Cup. I don't think there will be a lot of Shaddolls just in general, just because the deck is so hard to play. It wastes a lot of brain power trying to think about what you fuse with, what monsters you summon, and I just don't think that's a very good deck to be bringing to an event like the KC Cup, just because of how it works. You just want to play a lot of games really quickly. It doesn't really matter if you have like a slightly suboptimal win-loss ratio, as long as you win more than you lose. And then it's much better if you play a deck that is a lot more brain dead, because you get fatigued really quickly if you don't. So that's like a good thing, at least, is that you probably won't be playing a lot of Shaddolls. But at least I hope this video would be a tiny bit helpful. Maybe you missed some floodgates or some counters, and well, hopefully this will be like some of a suggestion that you could be playing in your deck, even though I don't recommend a lot of stuff that I listed here. It's more like a discussion of the things that you can theoretically play more than actual recommendations. If I were to recommend something, it's probably just DD Crow, because it hits a lot of other stuff, especially Despia. Droplet, because it hits a lot of other things. If your deck can play it, you should probably play Cursed Seal, because it also hits other decks better. So yeah, you can probably tell that a lot of these counters are better counters to other decks, and slightly less effective counters to Shaddoll. But these are the ones that I do recommend you playing, just because it hits more matchups. And even if you play a very specific counter to a matchup, chances are that they have an out to it, and then you just lose anyway. So that's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.